just like that, we're now live. So welcome everybody. Just for the folks on LinkedIn, if you were able to still see us, there was some synchronizing problems with the actual schedule. But no worries. We're going to have it up in there for you to check it out. Today, the topic is, let's just say it's the most important topic facing the planet today and facing all of us human beings. That's sustainability. And we're going to break that word down until we figure out what we got to do to be part of the solution instead of part of the problem. And our guest speaker today is the Frances Edmonds. She is the rock star of sustainability, and she's got an amazing history. And I'm going to just introduce Frances first and have her give us a bit of her background and on why she does what she does and why she's passionate about sustainability. And then we're going to dig into what she's actually doing with the folks over at HP. So Frances, welcome first of all, and thank you for joining us. And tell me a bit about the background and why this matters to you.
Well, thank you for being here. Delighted to be here. I started with a degree in environmental science and didn't really know what I wanted to do with it. I was passionate about sustainability, but over the years of working both in government and pharmaceutical and chemical manufacturers, eventually found my way to HP as a manager of environmental health and safety, and slowly worked more into sustainability writ large. And today I actually spend more time working outside of HP than I do inside of HP. And my job today actually is to change the way Canada buys. That is actually my job, because we know that if the signal into the marketplace is right, more companies will do more on sustainability, and we'll have a hope of meeting our climate and other targets for Canada.
I, for one, is on your side and doing what I can do. And, the way I look at sustainability in this world today, I think we all kind of get it to a degree. My simple view is like we're in this boat, and this boat's got a hole in the boat, and the water is coming in. And we have these little tools. We empty the boat as much as we can. And once in a while, a wave comes up and puts more water. We have to, work really hard. But the hole is not plugged. It never gets plugged. It just continues and continues to rise. And eventually, we all know what happens to a boat that's got a hole in it. And I don't know about you, but I'm not very good at treading water. So,
I like this planet. I want to stay here. I don't want to go to Mars.
Yes,
Elon can go, but I prefer staying here as long as I can.
Get your ticket, man. Apparently, it's pretty expensive too. But since we only have one planet, and we're really got to figure this out, let's dig into this, Frances. What is your definition, first of all, about the problem, and how sustainability plays a role into all of this?
Okay, so we've got many ways to look at this, and let's remember that most Canadians didn't have any sustainability education, so a lot of this is new for them to think about. So we try to bring it back to being very simple. HP's goal is to be the most sustainable and just technology company by 2030. We're already Canada's most sustainable technology company. And sustainability is a very broad subject area, but I think if we really distilled it down, the thing that we need to worry about most and first is, of course, carbon and climate. We know that the carbon emissions that we all emit from whether heating our houses, driving our cars, and particularly what we choose to spend our money on, are causing greenhouse gases to accumulate in the atmosphere, which is causing the planet to overheat. So simply put, we've got to reduce those carbon emissions, and there's many, many ways we can do that. But probably the fastest way is to look at how we spend our money and what we're actually buying and understand the impacts of those purchasing decisions today.
So let's start it off by saying, what are the 2-3 things that we should be watching when we buy? What should we be watching out for?
Right. So you need a little bit of carbon literacy. For most organizations, and we're talking to channel partners here, the impact is really in the supply chain and what you're bringing into your organization. You can think about your own office and heating and cooling and maybe employee travel and those kinds of things, but the biggest impact is really in the technology products that you're selling, because they have a very high embedded carbon. It takes a lot of energy and resources to make the average computer. 75% of the carbon footprint of a computer is in the making of it. We've made these products very energy efficient today, so less than a quarter is actually running the products, and then we have to worry about taking those resources at the end of the product's life and putting them back into circulation, so making that circular flow. So thinking about, well, let's start with the definition of sustainable procurement. So it's getting the best value over the lifetime of that product. So it's not just lowest purchase price anymore. We know that, often I'll sell to a customer and they'll say, well, I don't care whether it's energy efficient or not, because the procurement person is not paying the energy bill and not paying the end of life cost. So they're not looking at the total costs of owning that good. So best value for the most sustainable service or good. And in a circular economy, it's about buying services. So all of our channel partners listening today should be thinking about how they sell as a service versus selling boxes. That's the transition to the future economy that we all need to go. And we have to help our customers get there. We know that customers aren't necessarily ready for that. So we have to be able to offer it, and the customer has to want it. So this is a little to do with the procurement dance that we'll play. So that's the most sustainable service or good from the most sustainable supplier. We think about Amazon rainforest being cut down today, right? How many of us know whether we're responsible for that in the things that we buy? Right? The wood coming out of the Amazon rainforest, where's it going? How do we know where it's going? Who's doing what with it? We don't want it to be cut down. It's the lungs of the planet. How do we stop that from happening? It's about transparency, right? How does that tree get to my ream of paper that I'm putting in my printer? So one of the things HP does, for instance, is we have a zero deforestation policy for both our paper that we sell and our packaging. And we're also now working on every printed page that goes through an HP printer having zero deforestation impact through the work we're doing with WWF and many other nonprofits. So we've got best value for the most sustainable service or good from the most sustainable supplier. And then we need to align our procurement or how we choose to buy with our own goals. So do we have a goal to be carbon neutral by whatever date, net zero by whatever date? And all too often we're seeing that as a missing piece as well. So there's 4 elements to making procurement be really sustainable.
What are some of the questions we should be asking from our suppliers when it comes to sustainability? What are some of the low-hanging fruit questions that we can kind of at least get a gauge of where they are, or even if they even have an initiative?
Right. So we come back to this transparency and disclosure thing again. Have you set a science-based target for carbon reduction? That's a target that is in alignment with what the planet can support, basically. So science-based target. So that's a company attribute. Can you give me the percentage of post-consumer recycled content plastic in this good that you're selling to me? We think the industry average is at about 3% for post-consumer recycled plastics. We as Canadians for years have been, diligently washing our yogurt pots and putting them in those blue bins. What happens to that plastic? If there's nowhere for it to go, it just gets put in a landfill. We need to create a market for post-consumer recycled plastics by buying with that in mind. We've got a goal at the Canadian level of zero plastic waste in landfill by 2030. Today, after 30 years of doing take back and recycling, we're at a 6% recycle rate or circularity rate in Canada. So we need these markets to be developed by asking questions like, do you have post-consumer recycled content? And obviously, can you sell this to me as a service? I want the service rather than owning this product. And we know that if you extend the average PC life by 2 years, you decrease its carbon footprint by 30%. Now, if you think about it, that makes sense, but it's kind of like, so Frances, are you telling me that I now have to keep my brand new PC for 5 years? No, what I'm telling you is get it to a second life as quickly as you can. And the fastest way to do that is by buying it as a service. So, your provider, whether it's a channel partner or HP, can then refurbish it and give it a second life faster. All too often, companies don't even think about what they're going to do with the end of first life products. So where do they end up? They end up in closets, under people's desks. They even pay to store them sometimes. It's crazy. And all the time it's sitting there not being used, it's a waste of resources, because remember, we said 75% of the carbon is in the building of the product. So the faster you can get it to a second life, the better.
It makes a lot of sense because a lot of recycling companies do exist to kind of get that as refurbished computers.
Mm-hmm.
One of the problems that I always hear about why companies are sort of reluctant to do this is that I've got my data on there. And so if I just like hand over my computer with my hard drive in it to ABC company, how how do I know they're not digging into there to get my data? So you've got to do some data wiping before, right? And shredding that that device or remove the hard drive, things like this. How do you answer that from companies that's concerned about their data today, which, as you know, data is the new oil, as they keep saying. How do you do that?
That's a very valid concern and one that everybody has to be concerned about. So thank you for raising it. So, if the banks and insurance companies have figured out a way how to get either to end of life or to reuse through chain of custody, you put it in a locked truck, you get it to the refurbisher, they have systems for privacy and protection and data wiping procedures. It can be done. You just have to pay some due diligence and attention to it and go with reputable suppliers who are going to do the right thing. It's the same as the recycling thing. For decades, at least a decade, we've had take back and recycling programs for electronics in Canada. I helped put many of them in place. But we always had to tell people, if you're dropping it off at a landfill, for instance, you need to wipe the data first because we don't know what's happening to that. So there's a bit of caveat emptor, but it's absolutely doable. And we really want to make sure those devices get a second life. And in fact, HP has a goal of 75% product and packaging circularity. And we're only going to get to that with the help of our channel partners and our customers to get stuff back so that we can harvest parts and not destroy hard drives. They've got very valuable materials in them that don't need to be recycled. We should be reusing a lot of that stuff. So it's a whole new world. We just need to get better at doing this. It's absolutely possible to be done.
I think when I think about all the electronics that we have, and they have a certain lifespan, like you mentioned, but there's certain consumables that are using a lot of waste. I'm thinking right away of a toner. Toner cartridges can be recycled, but we're always told to buy new if possible. What is a good plan in terms of consumables to make sure that we're kind of not adding to the problem, but doing not only the best practice of buying it in a way that will not damage the computer, because we know some companies they refill cartridges cheaply and it will void your warranty. But what are the ways that we can do it in a smart way while going with manufacturer recommendations?
So that's a great question, and thank you for asking that. So we've had a take back and recycling program called HP Planet Partners for 30 years. Right, so we're not new at this. We know how to do this. And in fact, we've been partnering with a Canadian expert in plastics recycling who can make plastics circular. So a lot of our plastics are going through the Laverne plant in Montreal. And Randall, if you haven't been for a tour of it, I'd love to take you for a tour, where we're actually able to make plastics circular. And we've been working on this for a couple of decades now. So the first thing to think about when you're buying toner cartridges would be, well, has this toner cartridge been tested to make sure it's safe? And we know that a lot of the remanufactured cartridges, there is no indoor air quality testing. So that's the first thing you want to be sure. The next thing is, does the provider actually give me an opportunity to return it for proper high quality recycling? We know it's very easy to send things offshore and who knows what happens to them. So what is the guarantee? So if you recycle with HP Planet Partners, nothing is going to landfill. We guarantee that. And we make sure that every vendor we work with is fully audited and regularly audited, just as we would with our upstream supply chain. Some of the things, back to this transparency thing, when I first joined HP and we were making it public where the factory locations were for the upstream manufacturing. And I kept thinking, well, I don't understand why it's such a big secret. Eventually the rest of the industry followed. But today, we disclose the location of our recycling factories. And I don't know any other vendor that's done that. Like, why not? This is information that customers increasingly want to know about. They want to know that we know where everything goes and that we're in control of it and we're doing a good job to manage it. So a couple of key questions on toner. Do you have a good recycling program that has all of the requirements? Is it convenient? Is it both languages? Is there a good website? And then has this toner been tested to make sure it's safe for indoor air quality?
Yeah, it's one of the things about we don't know what goes into stuff, right? As consumers. So the question is, we were trusting that everybody is above board, but we all know that not everybody is above board. So it's definitely something to be watching out for. It's a great questions to be asking. When we think of sustainability in general and doing all this recycling and all that stuff, to me, it just starts to sound, is this expensive? Is this something that we can afford to do? I mean, I understand we can't not afford to do it because of the planet, right? But let's talk about, costs. Is this like out of our price range?
So, World Economic Forum, who are a very reputable organization, estimate that nearly all companies can take 30% of their carbon out of their companies and their emissions at no extra cost.
Wow. Wow.
So, given that we're in the decade of climate action, that's a pretty important thing to be pushing companies to do, right? It's simply just not managed because most people have no concept of a carbon footprint and weren't taught anything about it. And actually, what we need to be doing today, WWF estimate there's 1 billion business decisions made every day in Canada. What percentage of those are really made with anything to do with sustainability in mind? Almost none. We use the dollar as the proxy for all value, and yet we know that when we buy the lowest priced product, what we're doing is it means there's externalities of carbon, human rights, slave labor, somewhere in that chain that's just not in front of my eyes. But increasingly, we're in a globalized environment, so we know that these things are happening. I was at a presentation this morning, and one of the nonprofits said, how many of you can estimate how many slaves worked on your behalf in the last year? You want to know what the answer was?
I don't know, but I would say
80,
quite a few.
80. This is the estimate between the clothing you wear, the coffee you buy, whatever else it is, the electronics. So you want to be going with vendors that are taking care of this and trying to manage these risks down. And so, yes, that costs money. But at the end of the day, if you're paying a living wage, that means that maybe the kids of those workers don't have to be working anymore. They can go to school. So you're supporting economic development. And the idea is that it's not only the right thing to do, it is the best thing to do because it limits risk for your organization as well. You think about all kinds of things that happen in supply chains, and Loblaws and Joe Fresh, for instance, and the Rana Plaza, right? It can damage your reputation as well. And let's think about attracting and retaining top talent. We know there are talent wars in the tech industry today, right? You want you're only as good as the brightest and best employees that you have. So how do you get the best people to be coming into your organization? It's about living the values that they have on a day-to-day basis so that you can say, no, we pay attention to this. This is important to us as well. And employees will vote with their feet very quickly, both in attracting and then retaining them.
Yep.
I'm thinking of the, there's a diet called, I think it's the 100-mile diet, where you try to eat things that are local around you. For one, it lowers the carbon footprint because there's no overseas shipping and things like that. But also, you get to support the local economy. Are there any initiatives in the tech world that we can kind of buy local?
So that's a very complicated conversation, right? Because supply chains, because customers are demanding lower and lower prices, we go to where the labor is cheapest and where we can get the best value for the customers, which is what customers have been demanding. I think you'll start to see a lot more of this as we move forward. A good example was during the pandemic and the work we did with the federal government on leveraging 3D print to produce PPE here in Canada. We helped facilitate the HP 3D printers that are currently in Canada owned by other people to be actually pivoting to be making the headbands and the swabs for COVID testing so that we could supply them locally. And 3D print has a great opportunity from a repair perspective, shortening of supply chains. That's a very exciting concept, I would say, that is here with us today and can be absolutely grown, providing we design with the idea that we're going to have 3D printed parts for repair in the long run, right? So imagine, I don't know, your stove, your cooker, your vacuum cleaner, it's broken because it's missing a small plastic knob, for instance. Very typical scenario for electronics, right? Well, what happens if you could just go down to your local home hardware and pull the design for that knob from the cloud and have it printed right there in front of you? Now that electric device is suddenly available for a lot longer until it actually dies, right? As opposed to just needing a small plastic part.
That's so interesting. I want to come back to a question and kind of the thing that the employees are doing right now, and people looking for like a social justice, and that's a big thing to attract employees. But before I go there, I know HP bought this company. I can't remember where it was. I think it's somewhere.
Packaging.
Yeah, and they make this packaging that they print on 3D that is that's better than plastic. And can you tell me a bit about that?
Yeah, so you know, we're learning slowly, and it's been interesting, from developing a commercially scalable 3D printing system to, oh, well, maybe we could use that to, eat your own dog food. So can we, as we're transitioning away, we're trying to eliminate 75% of the plastic packaging in packaging by 2025. Well, guess what? What's the substitute for that? It's molded pulp packaging. And so making them, one of the great things about 3D print is it enables rapid prototyping. It's not really for the injection molding volumes of plastic parts, but it is for the rapid prototyping of molds to make new molded pulp packaging, right? So we're eating our own dog food, we're using it for ourselves. And then the pièce de résistance was this choose packaging, which actually makes a bottle, the only commercially available, I believe, today, bottle that is made out of paper. So we continue to invest in how can we add to what we already know and bring in other lines of business that will help us grow this. It's a pretty awesome place to be.
It's really an exciting opportunity, I think. It's just like
Mhm.
the new way of doing things. But back to that question, the great resignation, people don't want to, just work for companies anymore and make a paycheck. Um,
We want to make a difference.
they want to make a difference. And
Mhm.
and with this type of a thing from HP, this sort of a mission, right? It's something that people can get behind. How do you see that as a way for companies to sort of attract talent into their business?
Well, you need some external recognition of that. So, the awards, we've been listed on Canada's Greenest Employer list for 14 years in a row. Um, so, that helps give some external validation to what you're doing. But one of the tricks I do is, I train every single new hire that comes into HP to tell them all, because it's a very difficult story to tell. We have so much work that's going on in this. It's a 2-hour training session just to get them to the, oh, well, now I know what that is, not what I need to do, but this is, oh, I understand the basics now. And then, of course, we have all kinds of programs to help them grow and learn more on this. The other thing we do is we go out and we help train other graduates. So I do a lot of guest lecturing in higher education institutions, trying to spread the word. But it's that walk the talk, and I get the feedback all the time, when I train a new hire and I give them their volunteer t-shirt, so now they're actually expected to deliver on those 4 hours a month of paid time that they have to volunteer on. And one of the things we've found with the Amplify Impact program is that we gave all of our channel partners opportunity to take advantage of this training and these resources that we've developed over the years to actually implement with their own staff. And I had a good quote the other day. It's like pushing an open door. The channel partners want this. They're interested in this. They didn't quite know how to go about it, but yes, hey, now you've made this easy for me, HP. Let's leverage all the great learnings that you have.
Maybe we should change HP to humanitarian project. Because we're
I'll take it. I'll take it. I'm sure Bill and Dave would be really happy. They started the company with the idea that we're here to make a difference. And if you hear Enrique talking, we judge ourselves not by what we make, but by what we make possible. That's so powerful. One of our beliefs under the new mandate is one great idea has the power to change the world. And HP enables you to get out and do this stuff. I mean, all this work we've done on circular plastics with the Laverne Group in Montreal, this all came about because one engineer said, hey, we've been taking back these cartridges for, forever. And what we're doing with this high value plastic is we're putting it into things like cafeteria trays and wire spools. Wouldn't it be great if we could put it back into the same products, a circular system? And it was just his idea and his, willing to push. And of course, the wonderful partner we have in the Laverne Group, that, 2 decades later, we're using 1 million used drinking water bottles a day. We've got ocean-bound plastic coming from Haiti. We were able to produce the world's first notebook with ocean-bound plastics in it. And it all spanned from this one great idea and the desire to push it and make it happen.
brainstorming. Let's do a little brainstorming session if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
We are 3 days away from Earth Day. Now, probably too late to plan for this year, but what are some events or activities that an MSP or a reseller could do to kind of have some sort of environmental impact, or maybe have a branding message that day? Or is there? I'm just thinking. I think this is actually a Channel Next initiative, but you used to have a Green Day, right? Like
Yeah.
a IT
Mhm.
Green Day, which you would maybe set up a little booth somewhere and allow people to drop off their electronics so that they can be taken to a proper recycling. What are other things that you might suggest a company to do to kind of kickstart that initiative, even if it's just one day a year to start with? But it could be, Earth Day doesn't have to be one day. It could be monthly, could be weekly.
365 days a year.
Right. Well,
Let's start somewhere though.
my first recommendation would be to sign up to Amplify Impact. It's free. Why wouldn't you do it? Right. And there you get access to all of the training, carefully handwritten training for your employees, which you can make freely available. And you have to remember that employees have interests in many different areas. It isn't just human rights and supply chain or recycling. They all have different ideas. When we polled our partners, it's very interesting because the first thing they do in the Amplify Impact program is to do a self-assessment to benchmark themselves against where they are against the industry. And they all polled fairly low because that's what the program is designed to help them with, right? But when we looked at what areas they were interested in, we call it people, planet, or community, it was roughly evenly spread. So some people want to do things like e-waste take back. Some people want to implement a diversity, equity, and inclusion program in their own operations. So you have to offer a variety of things. But to me, it really comes back. The fastest way to green your organization is to buy from one that's already done it. Right? You're spreading that down the supply chain and starting to ask those questions in whatever bid documents you have. Have you set a Paris-based target? Have you trained your own employees? Can you tell me the footprint of this product? Have you disclosed your own carbon footprint? Through the Amplify Impact program, we're allowing partners to use MDF dollars to pay for software as a service to measure their carbon footprint. So now when you want to go carbon neutral because your customers are saying, well, we're carbon neutral, can you supply us carbon neutral products and services? You can say, yes, I'm able to do that. And HP's really helped grease the skids for partners to do that. It's a very compelling message for customers and employees. Did that answer the question?
Yeah, it's a good place to start is to sign up to the program, and that will probably spark some ideas. And I think there's a lot that can be done. I remember when I was an MSP that I would, when I refresh computers, I'd offer to take back the old ones, just because I did not want them to end up in a closet, and we would bring them to a proper well vetted recycle place. There are people that call me almost on a weekly basis that I do not want to deal with. But
Right.
There were some that were really good, and I actually visited the facilities. I saw how they took apart every single little piece of a wire to, make the gold here, put the cobalt there, or whatever. They really did everything, and to be able to actually visualize it and see it, walk through that factory, then I could trust it, and then I knew where to send my.
Right. You're absolutely right that the financial incentive to do the wrong thing with electronics recycling is very high because it's very cheap to put things in a sea container and ship it offshore somewhere and then out of sight, out of mind. But we all know that that's not, we're living in a planet that the impacts are global, right? So.
Yeah, it was that was a bad problem that they had in the past. And when we were looking at recycling companies to recommend, that was the first thing we asked: are you shipping the stuff offshore and just pretending you're recycling, or are you really recycling? And it was surprising to see a lot of folks, were afraid about that question because they were doing whatever bad things they were doing. When sustainability is a lot of moving parts. It's not just about putting the things in the right bins and doing some recycling and recycling your bottles and stuff. It's a whole way of life. I want to say it's almost like a cultural shift in how you think about what you do on a daily basis. When you look at the HP sustainability package that you guys have baked out, and by the way, that's like, I wanted to say 80% of the job, but it's at least half the job, right? Knowing what to do, when to do, why to do, how to do, that's the hard part. And I think that's where HP sort of invested in bringing up the blueprint, so to speak, right? And then the other half of the equation is beating them in their heads until people actually get it done. I don't want to say beating in the heads physically, but it does take push. It does take pull. You just can't just set it and forget it. All right. We in the tech industry just love the word plug and play. Set and forget. It's so easy. You don't have to do anything. We've created all this terminology, and in a way, we're undermining certain things we're doing because it's not set and forget. You have to work on it every day. So if you look at the sustainability program that HP has sort of put together, um, could you give us a little bit more of what's in there from an MSP perspective of if I participate, sign up, what are the things that I'm going to be doing that's going to help me get up to speed to where I become part of the solution instead of the problem?
Okay, there's a lot to get into
A
there.
lot,
So
right?
yeah, so it's called Amplify Impact, right? Sign up is free. The first thing that happens is a senior person, preferably CEO, signs a pledge. We're going to do this. Then you do a self-assessment, which, as I said, benchmarks you against your peers. And one of the interesting things that's come out of this, certainly in Canada and potentially globally, is companies are not exploiting that sustainability as a business opportunity. Interesting, eh? Last year, HP had more than $3.5 billion of business as a result of our sustainability leadership. So there's a market here. This is not just a cost and hard work and I have to do more. There's an opportunity here from a business standpoint. So let's think about exploiting that. So you get this self-assessment and you get a fully customized assessment report that tells you where you might have strengths and where you might want to be working. So you've got a customized individual report. From there, you want to assign some people, some employees to step up and do this. And let me tell you, this is the most exciting part. Employees are chomping at the bit to do this. They really want to do it. So if you let them have at it with the tools and resources and training that they've got from HP, you're already, a good chunk of the way along. And then, the icing on the cake, there are awards and recognition and celebrations. That HP's badging, all of the things that go along with making you feel good about the things that you've done and being able to celebrate with your employees. And then it's rinse and repeat, right? This is a journey, right? There's always more that can be done. So we're very early days right now. So we're just a year into the program, and Canada, of course, was a pilot program. So we've had the most experience so far, but by 2025, our goal is 50% of our worldwide partner community is signed up to this. And it's a carrot right now, but who knows whether it'll be a stick later on. I don't know. I have no visibility into that. But if you think about it, early adopters have the longest runway here and the most help and support, while we're not trying to support 10,000 partners. We're only trying to support a limited number of partners. So you would, of course, have access to me as well for some employee engagement or whatever else you need. So it's a really good time to be thinking about signing up today.
I mean, one can see sustainability, like you said, almost as a marketing opportunity because it is a key differentiator from a competitor who doesn't really care. And then you'll reach that target audience that actually does care, like we do, and will want to maybe even invest in your company because you have a program in place and because you have it maybe on a website and that you promote it. It is a marketing opportunity. I truly believe that.
We actually hear a lot about MSPs and channel partners always talk about, how do I differentiate myself from the competition? I mean, for me, this is like a no-brainer. Like differentiate yourself from an actual step up, right? Not sidestep, right? Oh, you have ABC brands. Well, I also do this for the environment and so on. A lot of people do this with charities and things like this, and the line kind of starts to become a little bit, you're supporting a charity, but what's behind it type thing. But when you're actually doing something for the environment, it's kind of like you're either doing it or you're not, right? It's fairly transparent. So for me, from a marketing perspective, I think you're spot on there. It's a way to kind of differentiate yourself, and the more you do, and the more recognition you get in the space, well, the better I think you may actually shine a little bit brighter. Good stuff. I mean, I know the badge stuff, logos and awards and stuff like this. And, there's this award industry, you know, everybody, you get an award, you get an award, everybody gets an award, right? Like in the school days, you cannot give a first prize anymore. It's got to be, as you know.
Participation.
Yeah. Um, how important and how recognized and how valid are the brands out there for, environmental stuff, and which are the ones that you believe are the ones that makes the most sense, that is more validated? Is there such a thing?
Right. So if you were looking at a supplier who's a multinational, you should be looking at transparency and disclosure. So the top one there would be CDP. So they ask for transparency. They ask companies to voluntarily report, and they actually also have a naughty list of companies that aren't reporting.
Good.
So they ask for you to report on your carbon impacts, and it's not just have you measured your carbon footprint, it's what is your ambition to tackle it. They also do it for water and for forests, and now supply chain as well. So of course HP scores a AAA for all of those in terms of reporting. But there's some very large suppliers out there who are not transparent, even printing companies who are not transparent about their impact on forests. And how can that be? Like that's just not okay in my mind. So CDP would be a good one. If you really want to go for the best, then you would look at the Global 100 Most Sustainable Corporations Worldwide, which is run by a Canadian organization called Corporate Knights. They also do a Clean 200 list. So you can start to see the rankings of, and that's just on the sort of sustainability side of the house. You might want to look at Know the Chain, that assesses supply chains for commitment to eliminating forced labor, for instance. So there's a multitude out there, and it depends what you're most interested in, but those would be the top ones I would think about.
It's good to know. I think a lot of channel partners out there also need to know who they want to be friends with.
Right.
So you might not have that designation, but if you are running with or working with companies with those designations, it means you're aligning yourself with the right friends. I don't know if you could actually say that,
Well,
but
it's a trickle down, isn't it? So we are a supplier to our customers who have net zero targets themselves. So they might, if we can offer, and I know this is available to the channel too, carbon neutral management services. That means when the customer's looking, okay, I've got a big job to make myself carbon neutral. I don't want to keep adding to that pile that I have to keep reducing on. So if I can buy a carbon neutral management service, I don't have to worry about that. I can now just focus on the other things, right? So I think you'll start to see this in the marketplace, particularly as we get towards 2030, more and more organizations demanding carbon neutral from their suppliers and the things that we're selling to them.
I think
really cool
the
angle.
corporate greed of momentum that was going on for so many years, I think it's run its course, and now we have to go to less greed but more paying attention to this stuff. I think it's so important. I think there's definitely ways that we can choose the companies we work for. There's different ways that we can even make sure that our companies are doing well, and even down, like we talked about, trickle down. It even starts at home, like how to educate our kids to just think about these things, because they'll be the leaders of tomorrow. So we have to, make sure that nobody's left out of this conversation.
That's an interesting light bulb just went off in my head physically, but it's almost trickle down, but trickle up,
I
because
hope it's a solar powered one just for the environment.
not yet, but I'm working towards that. But by supporting companies that is really doing this right, you're fueling them to do more of it, right? You're
Exactly.
saying, you're validating them. Go get them, do it. We're going to follow you, because not everybody's going to be able to lead in this industry, right? And so I'm thinking that, interesting that HP, and I'm sure other companies are going to stepping up or have stepped up in this area, that lead that charge, because by the channel community recognizing that HP is putting this blood, sweat, and tears, literally, into this game, and they have their hearts right. It's not just a gig to make money. It's something to actually better the whole planet and so on. If people start to believe that, then it's fairly obvious where you want to put your money, because you want to go after companies that's going to be able to double down and triple down. So if all of a sudden we could increase, I mean, this would be crazy, but let's say 20% more sales go to HP just because of sustainability factors, what that translates to in the whole sustainability getting bigger, better, and stronger and smarter, because they've got all the tools in place to kind of accelerate that. So is this something that you guys are just kind of getting started with, or is this something you guys see, you got to blow this up and make this bigger? Is that the mission?
It absolutely is. For a couple of decades plus, we've been working in supply chain responsibility, right? And that's absolutely where the next least cost ton of carbon is coming from HP's perspective, and we need to be working with that. But the Amplify Impact program grew out of the fact that we hadn't really focused on the channel, and there's huge opportunity there because of that. But if you think about this, it's the gift that keeps on giving, because every time, and CDP does this for their supply chain work, they have proven that if a buyer asks a supplier, have you measured your carbon footprint? Have you disclosed it? Have you set a target to reduce it? They then have to go to their suppliers to also do the same. So it's a trickle-down effect, and it's very effective. The one problem is that it takes time. And we have to walk and chew gum at the same time right now. We've left this so late now that the scientists are telling us we're in a code red for humanity, literally a code red. I mean, it's not just Greta anymore, it's everybody. And I think Canadians are very aware, with all of the natural disasters that have been happening across the country just in the last year, that action is really important. And if you think about the way HP is in Canada has focused on this, we've had a big focus on education. I sit on the board of Learning for a Sustainable Future, a nonprofit working in the K-12 space. I do all this guest lecturing, blah blah blah. And my position actually reports to the CEO of HP Canada. That's how important it is to us. I sit on the senior leadership team. And over the first half of my career at HP, I worked in getting HP to be able to call ourselves Canada's most sustainable technology company. But today, I spend more time, as I said, working outside of HP, helping other organizations do more on sustainability, because we know that's how we can have the most impact. And it's not just about giving money to nonprofits. It's now, I just finished sitting on the federal government's expert panel on the circular economy. A lot of time and resources that we put into that. I'm now sitting with the federal Minister of Environment on his strategy for the federal sustainability strategy. HP's funding me to do that because we know it's the right thing to do in our country, and to help have some business input, have some tech industry input. And to my knowledge, we're the only company doing that.
I hope other companies are taking note, because you guys just can't fight this battle by yourself, obviously. And everybody needs to get into this game. I know you guys, you did something with the Green Economy Canada, a kind of a research program. What's in that research? What did you find?
Sure. So we had done some initial research that showed that it was as bad as we thought it was in terms of public procurement. And we said, well, what does it take if most public procurement does not really count sustainability? The typical score is 3 percentage points or much less, usually, if it's in there at all. And they're not good questions that they're asking. So how do we actually change what's happening? We need to understand how to make the change happen. So Green Economy Canada, a wonderful nonprofit that helps businesses become more carbon literate and actually reduce their carbon impacts, stepped up and said, we'd love to do a pilot project with you. So we did this during COVID, which kudos to the broader public sector organizations that stepped up to work on this during COVID, because they were under undue stress and pressure. And for 18 months, we asked the question, where did you start from on sustainable IT procurement, and where could you get to in 18 months? What do we need to change in order to make something different happen? And so we published a white paper on this. We'll hopefully get the URL out there. But if you just search Green Economy Canada Sustainable IT Purchasing, you'll find the link there. And we developed a lovely tool, which was a self-assessment tool. It takes about half an hour, designed to assess where are you in your sustainable IT procurement and where could you be. So and the good thing here is that you need sustainability, line of business, and procurement all to be talking to each other, which they typically don't do today, right? So that was the biggest learning for me. Was it's like most sustainability problems, you need people of different skill sets to lean in and work together. Sustainability is a team sport. It's not just
Totally. Teams, it's a big team sport. One of the things that I won't want to get into the issue about the folks who don't believe in climate change and so on, but there's always those folks out there. And there's a few people who believe the world is flat too and stuff like that. And I'm not quite sure how that, synchronizes, but it's we need to kind of move past this debate, right? And not have a way to kind of like dismiss these things. So if you're channel people out there, the debate's over. The reality is, like, you can do something. And if you don't want to do something for the planet or for yourself or to attract people to your company, do something for the economical reasons. All right. Make it a marketing thing. Show that you actually care. Whether you care or not, that's entirely up to you. But showing that you care is probably, a good first step. Um, if you're looking at the whole, and again, keeping it to the technology industry, what do you think we need to do just this year, 2022? What would you like to see happen in the industry today, in this year, 2022?
Every RFP that goes out the door, ask your vendors, have you measured your carbon footprint? Have you set a goal to reduce it? And have you been public about it? First thing. And your best sustainable IT procurement is your next one. It's a continuous improvement thing, but we actually have to start doing it today.
Mhm.
And it may not be perfect. Take that definition of sustainable procurement: best value, most sustainable service or good from the most sustainable supplier in alignment with my goals. And hopefully you're setting some goals if you haven't already got it. But really, that's the first thing, is to get your procurement right. Fastest way to green your business: to buy from somebody who's already done it. Right?
There you go.
Working on some policies and procedures alongside, but that's the first thing to do.
It's a good first step. And actually, quite honestly, I know smart MSPs out there thinking, what if I was able to bake this into the RFQ process? And so I'm the only one providing products that has got the sustainability, check mark on it. I may actually win that RFQ, even if I'm more expensive. Aha. We all know how the RFQ game is rigged to certain degrees. And well, if you're going to rig it, maybe it's a good way to rig it, because you want to rig it in a way that actually makes sense for sustainability. What it Looking at the whole channel perspective in the IT industry, and sure, we're contributing to the whole carbon footprint, but then you've got the cars out there, and then you've got all the folks doing whatever they're doing with heat and all these things. That's the sea and the fishing and all the stuff that's combining. It's quite a large gulp of things that's going on out there. I heard that with the amount of fish that we're getting out of the oceans, that is reducing, the way for the oxygen to kind of get the carbon to be replenished with oxygen, and the thing just goes on and on and on and on. This is obviously part of the bigger picture, right? So we can't control the bigger picture, but if you had a magic wand, okay, for instance, a lot more about this than we do. What would your magic wand be? What would you like to see happen on the planet in the ideal situation to fix all this problem?
Well, I think we need this transparency thing. Like, if you had a choice on a supermarket shelf and you could say, well, if I buy this product, it results in 3 trees being chopped down in the Amazon, versus this
Mhm.
one that doesn't. I think people would make the right decision, right? It's because it's opaque and we don't see where these things are coming from. So this desire to give the customer, whether they're a commercial or a consumer, more information, and you're starting to see it even on Amazon today. What's the carbon footprint of this thing that you're buying? And it's very rudimentary right now, but that information should be available to people to be able to make those decisions. And as I said, I don't think there's a Canadian who isn't concerned about this today, whether it's plastics or whatever. And there are basic things we can do in our own lives. One of the good things that came out of the pandemic was people flying less. That's probably the biggest thing that most of us can do to reduce our footprint. Zoom computer meetings, they're not as good, everybody admits, but we can do most of our meetings this way. We don't always have to travel. And maybe once a week eat less meat. Like, there's lots of things we can do today that will make a big difference.
What I find interesting too, if I'm just thinking about, I signed on to a web host because they were green. They were offsetting the kilowatts per hour, and when you think about cloud computing, which a lot of companies, a lot of back day VARs would sell the Exchange server box, and that's a lot of energy. It's a lot of plastic and metal and all kinds of things. But as we go towards cloud computing, is that one way where we can kind of offset those, or is that still a necessary evil, because it still takes a lot of energy to power these things?
I was going to say, it depends. Where is that server farm, right? How is it being powered? And you always have to ask these questions, because it's never straightforward or simple. So, a way to do that is to simply say, I want a carbon neutral service, and make sure that, if they're buying offsets, or, they're using renewable energy, that's better. But, if they're buying offsets, are they credible offsets? So this would be paying for trees to be planted somewhere else that will take the equivalent amount of carbon out of the atmosphere. There's been some less than honest people working in that space. So, but it's getting better, and there's more and more options today. But you can't assume anything that you do doesn't have a carbon footprint. It does. It's just, where is the opportunity to reduce that? And we're looking at needing a 7% reduction year over year for the next 8 years to really have a hope in heck of being 50% chance of a livable planet, right? That's only a 50-50 chance, right? So this is really serious stuff, and start tomorrow or today.
I tell you, it's something that sometimes I just want to yell, the top of the of a building or something. I remember the first time I really got impacted was there was that town in Japan, I think it's Taiji or something, when they were killing dolphins and whatever, and then it was that they would keep one dolphin because they sold a dolphin for $100,000 to some aquarium, and they would kill the other 12 or 15 because they felt that was eating up all the fish on the ocean, that they were actually overfishing. And I remember I was angry for like a month when I saw that, and the pure stupidity and brutality of these things that happens, that we're always trying to find a way to cover up our footprints, and the transparency issue. I think you hit it on the nail, the nail on the head there, that if you don't have transparency, you have nothing, right? Without transparency, it's just a marketing playbook, and you can peel back that onion, and you can show many of these brands out there and issues. They're just making a statement, but behind that, when you peel it back, it's not quite as what we would hope it would be. So transparency is the way to go. How do we hold companies accountable to transparency? Is it just boycott them, not buy from them, call them out, put them in naughty lists? What should we do as the consumers of tech?
Well, it does require a little bit of research, right? Most technology companies today are issuing an annual report on their sustainability performance. We should be asking our governments to do the same, by the way.
Yeah.
But then looking for some of those external ratings and rankings agencies that we already talked about. Have they set a science-based target? Are they on CDP? Are they disclosing? Are they on these other recognition lists like Global 100? And simply preferentially buy from those companies and make it public why you're doing that. Because the laggards need to be, we need to move the whole market. It's not just about having one or two leaders. We need the whole industry to come with us. And it's not the only industry, it's all industries, right? I do just want to come back to your point about a marketing thing. So there's this thing called greenwashing out there, making false or misleading claims. And, customers and employees, they might not know why this is greenwashing, but they feel it, they can sense it. So, turning it into a marketing opportunity, you actually have to have done something of substance to be able to talk about it first. And I should tell you, I have written a guide on sustainable IT procurement. And so if you go to hp.com/go/sustainable procurement, there's a 30-page guide there with all the information that you could need. And it even has a little section on greenwashing in it. So it'll tell you a little bit more detail about what greenwashing is and how to avoid it.
We'll definitely get these links and posted in the story for everyone to check out. Randall, we're last 5 minutes. What do you want to jump in there with?
It reminds me of if anybody plays golf and hits those sand traps, there's the etiquette that you have to get rid of the footprints when you're done. You just it takes a little bit of effort, but it makes it so much easier for the next person. And I think as a company, we have to do the same. We have to take that same mentality. We have to, erase our own footprints. But if we're noticing that we're playing with a player who's not showing that same etiquette, stop playing with that player. Find somebody else. So I think that's the lesson I've learned today is we have a part to do, erase our own footprints, but also make sure that we're not playing with people who are disrespecting the rules.
Yeah, it starts with that transparency as well, right? Because the more you know about what to look for, right? If you don't know the rules of the game, that footprints are
And
not
what are the
acceptable.
questions to ask? That was a big important part. Find out what are the questions that you ask. Make sure you write them down, and then start making sure that your employees are asking those questions.
Wrapping this up, we have 4 minutes left. Francis, I'd like to give you the rest of the time to talk about, HP, your mission, and what you're doing there. And my question I'd like to ask you at the end was, do you feel optimistic or pessimistic that we're going to reach our goal?
Are you saving up for a ticket to Mars, or are you gonna stay with us?
Absolutely not. This planet is beautiful and has so much to offer. I'm the eternal optimist. It goes with the territory, I think. But I do believe once people understand and have the information, they make the right decisions. And, you see it all around you. It's important to think about this in every aspect of your life, but particularly, I believe business has a real opportunity here. Governments can't do this alone. They're struggling. We have never met a climate target in Canada yet. So, it's up to the business community to step up and really make this hum. And, sustainable procurement it's a blind spot for most people. But once they see it, it's very obvious. And the signal it sends into the marketplace is so powerful, and we really have not used it yet. So it's a wonderful, magical tool that we can use, and it will very rapidly transform how Canada does business. So I'm very excited about it.
So I'll stay with you in being optimistic as well. I mean, we have one planet. We got to make sure we take care of it. And it just seems to me that doing the right thing is much easier than doing the wrong thing. I never understood why doing the wrong thing is better or more profitable. It just seems to me that if you did the right thing, everything is better. First of all, you sleep better at night. You're happier, right? It's just so much better. I don't know where we got off this train where we had this greenwashing attitude and all those things that's going on. It seems like we do have to start to pick our friends better. So and I guess for channel partners out there, France, if they want to start, what's the website, the URL specifically they can go to kind of learn that or get started?
I don't have the Amplify Impact website handy, but if you Google Amplify Impact, you'll see there, and you can reach out to any of your partner business managers from HP or myself directly, and I'll find out who you need to talk to.
Perfect. Well, that's it for me. Thank you very much, Francis. This is a very enlightening type of experience for us, and there is a better way, and we do need leaders in this space. We have to go by what we think we know and shift to what we know. And it seems like what you're doing is actually doing the right things. And so all we've got to do is sort of, rinse and repeat, copy, rinse and repeat. So you've done the hard work. Thank you for doing the hard work, by the way. It is not easy being a pioneer or a leader in an area where everybody is not excited about. And kudos for HP. For actually, putting their money where their mouth is and helping make this a reality and leading the charge. I know other companies are trying to do it, and we're going to try to highlight as many of those moving forward. So takeaway here today is transparency is important, and hold those folks accountable because not because they say they're transparent, that they actually are, right? Ask questions and dig deeper and make it part of your culture if you want to attract the right people. Thank you, Francis. It's been a pleasure. Randall, as usual. We'll do an outro to everybody. We'll have the recordings up pretty soon.
Thank you.